Greetings fellow painters, Trahane here with a short follow-up to my Painting Hastur video, where today we'll be painting the 4 Hastur Disciples. Starting with a white prime miniature, we are going to slather on some muted violet ink by Liquitex. This miniature is going to be painted using the same colors and in much the same manner as when we painted Hastur. Therefore, it's much easier to just go ahead and paint these 4 Hastur Disciples right alongside painting Hastur. Once we have finished applying the violet ink, we're going to move on to a white ink dry brush. We are painting this model as if the light is coming from the model's left side. Therefore, we're going to be focusing most of our dry brushing and most of our highlights to the left side of the model. With those highlights looking pretty good, we're going to move on to adding some processed yellow by Daler Rowney, along with a little mix of muted gray, and start coloring the robe on the Hastur Disciple. We're going to apply this yellow ink mix in smooth, thin layers, being sure not to let the ink pool in any of the recesses that may obscure some of our shadows. And while I do start out painting this with a standard paintbrush, I do soon give in to laziness and switch to the airbrush for the other 3 models. We will paint the entire robe in this mixed yellow base coat before moving on to adding white ink to the mix of our muted gray and processed yellow to begin highlighting the model. This is the most time-consuming part of the painting process, as we're going to do this in 3 separate passes over the miniature, adding a little bit more of the titanium white ink with each pass. As we add more and more titanium white to the mix, we're going to be covering less surface area of each part of the miniature. We're going to start out initially covering about 80% of each feature of the miniature, whether that is the left side of the hood, the left arm, the upward facing areas of the breast, and upward facing right arm. And then each time we add a little more titanium white, we're going to end up covering a smaller and smaller portion of each of those areas, until eventually we'll just be stippling on a few little dots of nearly pure titanium white as a final highlight in each area. And those final highlights are going to be added to just a few select upward facing areas, like the top of the left breast, the top of the hood, top of the left shoulder, as well as an edge highlight around the front of the Disciple's hood. With the highlights all finished, we will dip into some pure processed yellow ink thinned a bit with water and begin glazing over the highlighted areas. This will help bring some yellow saturation back to the robe in the places that we may have washed out a little bit too much with the white ink. And after all that time that we spent highlighting, this is actually the fastest and easiest step of the process. And next, using glaze medium and muted violet ink, we get to work on the shadows. We're going to work this violet shadow color into all the deep recesses of the robe, focusing more heavily on the right side of the model. And when filming your miniature painting, don't have brightly colored swatches of paint in the background, or that is what your camera will focus on. Okay, moving on to some Necromancer Cloak by Army Painter. We're going to apply that to the model's boots, pants, sleeves, mask, necklace, and gun. We're going to apply this paint basically straight out of the bottle, going for complete coverage and opacity. And this step will be a little faster and easier if you had previously carefully applied the yellow to the robe using a brush rather than covering all of these parts with yellow by using the airbrush. We're going to choose Ash Gray by the Army Painter to highlight the model's sleeves, boots, and pants. We are not going to use this color to highlight the mask, necklace, nor the gun. Next, we will move on to using some flat brown by Vallejo to base the model's hands, the stock of the gun, as well as the foregrip, the Disciple's face, and the Disciple's hair as well. The wooden components of the gun will remain this color, whereas we're using the flat brown as a base color on the hands and face for the flesh color that we will apply to the model next. The hair will remain dark brown as well. The color that we're choosing for the Disciple's flesh is going to be Dark Flesh by Vallejo. This will be added to the hands and face in a couple of thin layers, building up to a bright flesh color, but still allowing some of the dark brown to show through in the deep recesses. Glacier Blue by Vallejo is the color that we will choose to highlight the Disciple's mask and necklace. The Glacier Blue will be applied sparingly in small dots and little lines to give a non-metallic metal look when it's applied over the Necromancer Cloak. We will use a mix of Deep Blue by Army Painter and Glacier Blue by Vallejo to dry brush over the raised areas of the Tommy gun to give it that blue barrel look. Next, I used Leviathan Blue Contrast Paint by Citadel through an airbrush to add a shadow to the right side of the miniature. The Leviathan Blue is sprayed from below at an upward angle. The raised areas on the right side of the model are then highlighted with a mix of Leviathan Blue and some titanium white ink. I will link to my Hulk video here, which shows in detail how to accomplish this. Thank you so much for watching this video tutorial on how to paint the Hastur Disciples.